a great vice president, former vice president of this club, who will soon go to San Dimas. I know, Bertha Perez.
Good morning, fellow Toastmasters. Back in 1960, a large group got together for presentations for government leaders and pharmaceuticals. New development had been presented with like vaccinations, antibiotics. There was just something new in the medicine, as we all know. And researchers were doing an excellent job presenting all this. And everybody was just amazed of praising them, and they kept on asking the director, why don't you go up there and present? He's like, oh, no. I could only talk to my feet, not to an audience. The researchers kept on presenting, and eventually, to his surprise, the chairman says, I know he doesn't like public speaking, but please help me introduce the director. As you can imagine, it was pitiful. He did a horrible job. He was excusing himself. He couldn't think on his feet, and he only had a few sentences to say. How does this relate to now as far as impromptu speeches? For the most part, it hasn't changed. We're in 2020 almost, 60 years, and still a lot of people fear public speaking, stage fright. So today I want to share with you what you can do with tips and guidelines to give a proper impromptu speech. An impromptu speech, we know it's thinking on your feet, whether it's at work, you're asked to give a quick presentation, at a social event, family event, to give a toast, even an interview. Tim, this is a good opportunity. Interviews, they make a difference in impromptu speech. You don't know what they're going to ask you, but you know it's coming. So it's a good opportunity to improve on your impromptu speeches. So first I'm going to start with giving 3 tips for giving an impromptu speech. The first, always stick to the truth. Don't make it up, because then you start getting confused, and before you know it, you're rambling and going all about. Stick to the truth. If you're happy, say that you're happy. The feeling will be authentic and people will notice it. If you try saying, I'm very excited, it won't show as much as if you say, I'm really happy, I'm so glad to be here, because your emotions just show. The second tip is to share from a personal experience. Say a story. Say something that happened to you, whether it's in the past. Just say, for instance, you're asked a question. Talk about self-driving cars. Well, why don't you talk about the last time you attended a Google presentation and there was a self-driving car? Wait, you weren't there. Okay. Well, how about if you talk about the last time you talked with your spouse or a friend about self-driving cars? Wait, you didn't have that conversation. Okay. Well, then just talk about when you first heard about self-driving cars. The first time I heard about it was in the Jetsons. Or Back to the Future. But just get the idea going. Think, how can you come up with the story to bring it back to your impromptu speech? And the third is practice out loud. Practice. Don't think it. Because when you, for instance, dancing, you don't learn dancing by thinking about it. You gotta practice it. There are several options for practicing out loud. You can do it in front of a mirror. You can record yourself. Sometimes we don't realize things we do. I've noticed I used to just stay like this, or I used to do this a lot, bouncing. You start noticing little tics. You want to stay away from that. From people getting distracted from your speech, right? And the other way to practice, we mostly all do this now, is to practice in a group, because you get feedback. And it's important to obtain feedback. If you don't get the feedback, you don't realize what you're doing wrong. So those are the 3 tips I have. Stick to the truth, share from a personal experience, and practice out loud. And lastly, most of you know that I'm an engineer. We're known to be with monotone voice, but one thing that we do like are formulas. So I'm going to share a formula with you. And this is the FAT method. It's F-A-T. The FAT method is a way to remind you, how do you give an impromptu speech? The first one is F, to feel. I've already went over this tip. Express your feeling about a topic. Share how you're feeling at that moment. Like I said previously, you just want to, if you're happy again, say you're happy. Secondly, an anecdote. Share a relevant story. For instance, if someone's it's their last day at work, and you're asked to give a little talk about them, say a story about them. For instance, when my former supervisor left, there's so many stories I could have thought about. When we first met, just any story. You can make it funny. Don't try to make it funny. Just say it as it comes out. Sometimes I know I try hard to be funny, and it's just, I can't. It has to be natural, right? And then lastly is T, to tie it back. Tie back a story to your topic. You want to make sure that you bring it all together. And you want to make sure that when you're doing an impromptu speech, you're also focusing on the delivery. Like I said previously with that story of the director, it's the impression that you make. You can know all this information, all this research, but if you don't present properly, people are going to remember that. And if you present properly and your information is delivered, they're gonna absorb all that. So you gotta show confidence. So as an example for the FAT method, I was asked at one point to give an impromptu speech. My sister-in-law was having a bridal shower, and of course nobody wanted to talk, but everybody knew I kind of had the Toastmasters background. So they're like, Bertha, why don't you give a toast? So I'm like, okay, why not? So the feeling, I was definitely happy. I was so excited for both her and my brother, because they both wanted to get married, but they weren't getting married. It was almost 10 years already, and still there was nothing happening. But I shared the feeling, how I was happy to see both of them grow as a couple, and I was now going to be able to experience watching them get married. And an anecdote, well, the story I shared was, they're opposites, complete opposites. She loves eating healthy, he loves eating super junky. They like to go camping, they like to share experiences, and they show a balance. So I talked a little bit about them, and I brought it all together. I brought it all back together and just wished them luck. So just keep this FAT method in mind whenever you're gonna do an impromptu speech, because this will really help you. And I want to encourage all of you to really practice. I always say when table topics comes up, I say I really enjoy that portion, because it gives you the ability to think on your feet, and just, you're not wasting time on preparation at that moment. But if you continue to practice, it will show when you give your impromptu speech. And I just encourage all of you to participate. Don't look away. A lot of you look away. Don't pick on me. But this is your opportunity. We don't all get to practice, so this is your opportunity to practice here. Thank you.